Sure, I could have stayed in the past. Could have even been king. But in my own way, I am king. Hail to the king, baby.
Sargon of motherfucking Akkad, the undisputed king of the shitlords, and one of the very first YouTubers I watched. I came to the YouTube game pretty late. As of this video, Sargon is just shy of 300,000 subscribers, so I suspect most of you have already heard of him or watched his content. But just in case you've sprung fully formed from your father's forehead in the last 24 hours, in which case, it's the current year! I wanted to introduce you to him in the context of the SJW Rehab series, because love him or hate him, and there's plenty of both to go around, he's a significant face card in the shitlord royal flush of YouTube debate. I say shitlord with due affection, by the way. Now, before I go on, I wanted to say thank you for the views and comments I've received so far. I've gotten some very insightful questions, and a few people have asked about my personal beliefs in politics. Like, am I a white supremacist, for example? These questions are not unwelcome. The answer is no, by the way. I will make videos that are explicitly my own beliefs. For the moment, however, I'm just presenting information, and in a series about learning how to put your own previous or current biases aside in order to evaluate everything, I'm really conscious about trying to stay on the piste. I neither 100% agree or 100% disagree with anyone I profile, or anyone ever, really. You're going to see me reference people I have very little in common with ideologically, but they bring something important to the table. But back to Sargon. I must admit a degree of trepidation here. There's a voice in the back of my brain going, I got a bad feeling about this drop. When I told a friend of mine I was profiling Sargon next, he said, are you having a here, hold my beer moment? It's entirely possible. Wouldn't be the first time. But given that this entry is about putting yourself out to the best of your ability, owning your shit, not giving two fucks, it would be hugely contradictory for me to turn back now. So, Sargon of Akkad. He came to my attention during the fallout of Gamergate. Everybody remember Gamergate? Of course you do. I was initially pretty clueless about the whole issue, as while I'm a gamer, I'm not a capital G gamer, and I don't keep up with game reporting. I'm kind of a Halo and beer gamer. I'm old enough to remember when game reviews were listening to your friends shit talk while you played Unreal Tournament over a LAN. Fuck, I'm old. Oh yeah, Gamergate. But when the Honey Badgers were ejected from the expo for supporting Gamergate, I started trying to understand what the fuck was going on. Enter Sargon of Akkad, a bearded Brit living in Swindon who had a lot to say on a lot of things. On a side note, it's useful if you want to get more out of Sargon's commentary to familiarize yourself with the differences in right-left terminology, geopolitically. Liberal and conservative don't mean the same thing in every part of the world in political parlance. Anyway, the first thing I noticed was that this man could fucking speak. But ability as an orator is superficial delivery and presentation, and not inherently indicative of sound arguments. I am embarrassed to admit that I am aware of the warm southern hemisphere tropically effect confident male voices have on my delicate lady regions. So if I'm evaluating for argument, I always replay the dialogue through the filter of imagining Fran Drescher saying it. If I'm still on board, even if I want to stab my ears with a screwdriver afterward, it's a good sign. Sargon passed the Drescher test. Oh, for the record, I have to do something similar with Mercedes Carrera and pretend she's wearing Juggalo makeup. Intellectual honesty! The second thing I noticed about Sargon was the breadth of topic. Gaming, to history, to politics, to philosophy. Now, whenever someone has this kind of spread, I always give a bit of shrift in the details, because I dig the whole specialization is for insects principle, and that usually sacrifices some acuity in specifics for competence overall. He's not an expert in a particular field, and nor has he ever claimed to be. But he researches, writes carefully, speaks authentically, and always allows for his own fuck-ups. If you watch a lot of Sargon, you'll note he's very quick to admit when he doesn't know things or doesn't have a particular specialization. But when you combine appealing personality and strong presence with this breadth of topic, you get critics! And boy does he have some doozies. Oh, every time I delve into his comment sections and Twitter feeds, I honestly hear dueling banjos in my head. The shitposting mixed in with the sheer moral outrage. Oh, it's just delicious. And, okay, I know I'm not undoomed. There's only one undoomed. He's undoomed. My graphic abilities stop at Ralph Wiggum levels of paste eating, okay? For what it's worth, I was going to do this with a sock puppet show, but when I went to make one to represent Sargon, all my socks were too white. Well, I wouldn't be me if I didn't get into the criticisms a little bit. I'm not here to wank Caesar, but to do whatever it is I'm doing, and so on. So some of the criticisms are fly shit out of pepper, or just not especially clever, so it's not worth my time, and I'm not going to explore it here. However, there are two areas of criticism Sargon has had in the time I've been following him that I think are worth examining. The first is the infamous Kate Brooks interview.
I am Frau Blücher.
This was an interview Sargon conducted with an Oxford debater whose debate footage defending feminism went viral, and she became the target of widespread internet mockery. Sargon's interview was, by everything I saw, in the spirit of setting the story straight. The record scratched with this one for me personally as I watched it, and this is likely my own bias bearing its teeth, but every fiber of my being was screaming that Kate Brooks was lying through her fucking teeth. Feminism LOL explored this in a couple of videos too. I watched the Sargon Brooks video interview with my hands shoved into my hair like the Jackie Chan meme, and I actually yelled at my screen. If we'd been friends in real life, I would have immediately called Sargon up, invited him out for a pint, and said, "The fuck, man?" But what I didn't do is immediately mosh the unsubscribe button. Because either my gut reaction was right, and I still wanted to hear what he had to say and how it played out, or my gut reaction was wrong, and I still wanted to hear what he had to say and how it played out. I'll link the video in the low bar, and for the record, Sargon has subsequently acknowledged, at least twice publicly that I've seen, that Brooks was less than forthcoming. But looking at all of Sargon's interviews, he is consistently affable and patient, even with guests I want to shiv in the eye with their own microphone after about 30 seconds. He's not an aggressive shot caller in interviews, and he often interviews people who represent fiercely opposing points of view. So when I calmed my tits, I started to see this approach in a strategic light. Whether intentional or not, if Sargon had not conducted this interview the way he did, I would not have had the opportunity to form my own conclusions. Her dishonesty, as I perceive it, will now be on display forever, despite efforts to erase internet identity. This patience is a strength Sargon has that I don't. I'm still pretty quick to react in some things, and it's also why I should probably never ever do interviews. So in the end, in this situation, I don't give two shits about accusations of pussy begging or blue pill thought or cuckdom or any of that noise. I ended up with another arrow in my quiver thanks to his skills as an interviewer. Advantages can be coaxed from every situation. And if I'm being really soft and fuzzy here, giving someone the benefit of the doubt when in hindsight they did not deserve it is something I've been guilty of many times in the past in my own life. and I probably will be again. So the second criticism I'm going to address is with respect to Sargon's analysis of the Cologne attacks. I'm not prone to touchy-feely admissions of emotion, but his video frankly haunted me. Watch it. It was my wake-up call that, despite my own ongoing personal study of Islam and the Quran, I really needed to up my game with researching this on a global scale and begin taking it more seriously beyond just the abstract. But at the end, there was this. And heads exploded. Oh, I did not have this visceral reaction to being cautioned to mind my P's and Q's on this particular subject. I am no stranger to the banhammer myself. I speculate that some of this difference in reaction has to do with how free speech is treated from America to Canada to the UK. Remember, in the UK, a man was arrested for doing nothing more than quoting a Winston Churchill speech referencing Islam. See also the Glasgow police. Sargon made a follow-up video addressing this criticism that I think sums it up well. Sargon is not reckless. Sometimes ground must be given in order to gain more later. Switching horses a bit, I want to highlight an excellent article recently published by Kathy Young on heatstreet.com. Young writes, quote, "Feminists, humanists, egalitarians, shared goals and values are important. Labels are not. Nor should there be ideological litmus tests beyond core principles of human rights and equal treatment regardless of gender. That doesn't require a particular position on gun control, national security, or economic regulation." End quote. I couldn't agree more. And this brings us back to Sargon and the principle of dominion. Dominion is a pretty charged word. It has both denotations and connotations of kingdoms, monarchies, mastery, ownership, and imperialism, concepts that have become almost universally pejorative in the culture of the 1%, as authority is almost always painted as the enemy by the SJW talking heads. I'm looking at you, Decoded. But dominion as an intrinsic principle here is simply recognizing that there is one area you can choose to control, own, and rule over without ever infringing on anyone else's freedoms. The shape of your own vision. There's a risk when you have the ability to see all sides of an argument and you're fundamentally opposed to telling anyone else how to live their life, to stay in the endless loop of fence-sitting and, in the long run, apathy. If you've not yet read Dr. Thomas Sowell's book, A Conflict of Visions, it's an excellent place to start deconstructing the left-right narrative. I'll link it below. Sargon is the poster child for Dr. Sowell's idea of visions uniting people who may disagree on finer details or language or tone or approach, but if you strip the trappings away, there is the common ground. Sargon takes on feminism, he takes on humanism, he takes on nationalism, the alt-right, the SJW left, but his core message, his vision, remains the same throughout. Stephen Fry recently stated in an interview on the Rubin Report that self-pity was the ugliest human emotion. Far be it from me to disagree with Lord Melchi, but I'll offer that guilt is right up there. It's a bludgeon used by both sides. White guilt can now be applied not only in terms of slavery and race privilege, but also by nationalists chiding other whites for being cucks, by not protecting their own racial interests in what is seen as the most empirical methodology. Shame is an excellent weapon against people who are both driven to be virtuous, but are also still looking to external sources for confirmation of their virtue. Don't let yourself be silenced by your own good intentions, or you'll end up serving the good intentions of others. This principle holds true for history as well. The good intentions of tearing down statues, banning flags, books, or movies. Attempting to bleach history is the exact opposite of intellectual dominion. It is intellectual surrender. But if you do not have the option of intellectual exposure and choice, yes, the exposure to parts of history that are fucking awful, and yes, the choice to be an asshole, then you're merely defaulting, and you have not come to your beliefs through philosophical process at all. Sargon has dominion over his own beliefs. Despite the pokes from all sides he receives, his statue doesn't fall. This isn't blindness, it isn't stubbornness, it's that he has dissected his own beliefs down to the stapes and does not bow to external pressure. Whether you think he's right or wrong, he's pretty fucking consistent overall. And that is dominion. It's not based on right or wrong, right or left, only self-knowledge, conviction, and dominion over your own beliefs in the face of critique, because you vetted yourself as exhaustively as you can, means you can sit down with anyone, anywhere, from any perspective, and potentially have a pretty good debate. It doesn't matter if you're called a sexist or racist or misogynist, because whether you are or you aren't, when you have dominion over your beliefs, it completely disarms the emotional sting of these insults that are so often used to manipulate opponents into silence. You will see this demonstrated over and over again in Sargon's interviews, but never with sharper focus than in his recent interview with Millennial Woes. I'll link below. It is a masterpiece of two powerful voices from vastly different visions demonstrating the ability to parlay across the gap. It's like a really good boxing match with brains. I got a little excited there. Thank you so much for listening. And if anyone needs me, I'll be in my bunk.